I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we meet tonight on the lands of the Wadawurrung people. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Each year we present an event for Harmony Fest and we shine the light on different cultural groups within our community. And at this time of year, I always like to remind people that in Australia we have Harmony Festival and in Ballarat, or Harmony Day, and in Ballarat we have Harmony Fest. But of course it comes out of the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, which will be on Friday the 21st of March. And while it's really important to celebrate cultural differences and social cohesion, I think it's also important that we remember that the elimination of racial discrimination is also really important too. And one of the reasons we're always really happy to participate in Harmony Festivals is because here at the Eureka Centre we tell the story of the Eureka Stockade, and it's a story of a culturally diverse group of people of 35 different nationalities who banded together to confront tyranny and injustice on the goldfields. And we live in a time where I think some people would like you to believe that maybe migrant stories aren't Australian stories, and we know at the Eureka Centre that they very much are at the heart of the Australian story. Eureka is a migrant story. And we look at those Eureka rebels who were largely migrants, and we now celebrate those people as Australian heroes. So that's a legacy that lives on in the rights and liberties we enjoy today in our modern democracy. And tonight we're screening Diana Paez's film Nuestras Voces, which shares another important part of our multicultural story. The film features the stories of 32 members of the Spanish-speaking communities who arrived in Victoria between the 1960s and the 1980s. During that time, thousands of people from Spain and Latin America, mainly Argentina, Chile, El Salvador and Uruguay, migrated to Australia, mostly escaping unstable and dangerous political situations, namely dictatorships and civil war. And the film shares stories of their hopes, struggles, but also their achievements across all areas of society in Victoria. And following the screening, Diana will be joined on stage by Claudio Vasquez for a conversation about the film, its themes, and its mission to build awareness and understanding. And Diana is, of course, the director of Nuestras Voces, and Claudio works primarily for SBS Spanish as a journalist and content producer. So thank you both for joining us this evening. Now it's time for the film Nuestras Voces, directed by Diana Paez and produced by Latin Stories Australia. Please enjoy.
Se realizó el golpe de Estado militar en Lima en el 68.
Los uruguayos fuimos muy perseguidos en la República Argentina.
A días después, Pinochet haya tomado poder.
Hay los últimos 4 asientos en el último charter de Perú a Australia. ¿Los quieres tomar o no? Le digo, tengo que llamar a mi esposa. No, me dijo, la respuesta es ahorita, sí o no.
El estado de Victoria, cuando nosotros llegamos, y la ciudad de Melbourne, eran otras cosas. Después del sábado al mediodía estaba todo cerrado.
Y Australia era un país dormido. No poder, lo que leías no entendías, lo que escuchabas no entendías, no te podías comunicar, era como estar ciego, sordo y mudo.
Estaba la política de la asimilación.
Cuando yo llegué a Australia, mis palabras fueron: este es el paraíso terrenal.
Que calmó todas esas necesidades y que llenó todas esas partes fue la música.
Y aprender de otros, de no enseguecerse dentro de lo que es una cultura. Eso no significa separarse de una cultura.
I would like to say thank you also to the Eureka Centre for organizing this, very important. And before starting with the Q&A, I would like to introduce myself very quickly. My name is Claudio Vasquez. I'm a philosopher, journalist, content producer, and also correspondent in conflict zones. And I work for SBS Spanish. And I'm an immigrant as well. I was born in Chile, and I had the opportunity to live in 7 different countries so far. I'm living here in Australia. I arrived 11 years ago, I think. That's why Diana's work also resonates very deeply with my own life experience. Before starting with the Q&A, I would like to talk a little bit about Diana's work and life. Diana Paez is a Colombian-Australian filmmaker and an artist based in Ballarat, and after migrating at 19 years old from Latin America to Melbourne, Diana has spent over a decade exploring cultural identity, the emotional landscape of transition, and the richness of cultures, both in their traditions and in the evolving realities of those who navigate multiple influences within them. Through her creative expression, primarily in non-fiction film and visual storytelling, Diana captures both the intimate and the collective, offering reflections on human experiences. Diana believes in the power of storytelling to challenge stereotypes and foster inclusion, not by emphasizing what divides us, but by highlighting what connects us as human beings. Through collaborations with communities in Melbourne and Ballarat, Diana seeks to tell stories that invite audiences to see the world through a different lens, shifting perspectives with empathy. Diana works closely with community groups and organizations to amplify underrepresented voices, always focusing on resilience, joy, and shared humanity. Diana Paez, thank you for joining us this evening. Well, I have many questions for you today about your documentary and also about your life. And I would like to start talking about the documentary, Nuestras Voces, Our Voices. And Diana, please tell us how the idea for this project came about, and why do you consider it important to portray the lives and experiences of Latin American and Spanish migrants who arrived in Australia around 50 or 40 years ago?
Thank you, Claudio, and thank you everyone for being here. So the idea came with an organization called Latin Stories Australia. I've known them since I arrived to Australia pretty much. I was collaborating with them, documenting their initiatives with community engagement. And then one day the idea came, one of them came to me, we're thinking about doing this. There has not been, this hasn't been documented before in Australia. There's a lot of other communities, not much of the Spanish-speaking community, particularly in those decades, because the bigger wave came probably after the 1990s. And then why those decades? I think it's important because those people experienced the transition of Australia, going officially from white Australia to a multicultural country. So you can see those who came 60s and 80s, they had very different experiences, similarities in feelings, but in experiences, it shows a transition of the country.
And Diana, this documentary was made during the COVID-19 pandemic. We all remember, all the lockdowns and restrictions, very tough for all of us. And I would like to ask you, what were the main challenges of making this project during the pandemic? And also, did you ever feel that it might not be the right time to carry it out? Maybe?
Many times. Many times. We started the idea before the COVID, and I think if you were here, you remember maybe the first lockdown was like a week, and it's like, okay, that's it. People are sick, it's gonna be a month or something, and then it lasted many years. So, but we had a project with, the Victorian government funded the project, and we needed to move with the stories, with the project. Challenges, many, like as a filmmaker, at least visually, I had other ideas. We were gonna do intergenerational interviews, so someone that came recently, someone that came before, and then I wanted to follow at least 5 people in their daily lives, things that you think visually may be more immersive, things that at the end couldn't happen, which was a bit frustrating for me. But then at the end, I think now looking back, the fact that it was COVID and we still did it, it takes even more meaning. And then you can see the backgrounds of their houses, it's a bit more intimate. We are all very familiar with a Zoom meeting. And even looking now, I just remember some moments of how challenging it was even to film the Zoom meeting. To have Alfredo, for example, hold it horizontal, he decided he was not going to do that, and it's fine. And then during COVID breaks of the lockdown, I would go visit them, have a day with them and film little bits and pieces, but then COVID came back and then ran away back home. So it was production-wise very challenging. I wanted to work with 2 other female filmmakers. They needed to leave the country the first month, so it was pretty much me doing everything, the edit, the filming. Of course, with Latin Stories Australia kind of keeping me sane with a lot of phone calls, voice notes, speaking all the time. And then at the end, it's just, I guess it's an exercise of humility and be like, okay, what is important here? It may not look like I want it to look this or that, but it's the story and it's the people behind it. And as a fun anecdote, like I even went back to film Alfredo, for example, the Spanish guy, and I have a whole interview on camera that looks beautiful. But then when I had that and I had the Zoom and I was like, it's not the same because we already had this spontaneous chat here. So I decided to keep the Zoom that, was lagging. Everything happened with that call with him. But he was enjoying it. He was having a drink. So it was, that other experience stays with me as a chat I had with him. I met his wife. He gave me wine and cheese, very Spanish from him. It was beautiful. But then it's like keeping to the core of why do I do what I do? And it's just transmitting that emotion as raw, as real as possible. But challenges, many. But we needed to move forward with the project because we waited around like 6 months to start, and then we're like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. Let's just do it.
Okay, that's great. You were talking about the stories, beautiful stories, very moving indeed, different but similar in some ways. Diana, how did you choose these stories for the documentary?
That was another process that started with the idea of the whole project. Because the aim of the whole thing was to give this understanding of the migrant and refugee experience from the Spanish-speaking angle that hasn't been shown before. Of course, it has many similarities to, it's a global feeling, I'll say. But we really needed that the project represented who came back then. So again, as a filmmaker, maybe I would be like, I just want to follow 3 people, but it's like, the scope of the project is true representation of who came back then. Many Chileans came back then, so we have more Chileans, Argentinians. We had a database of 70 people, incredible database of people working in all kinds of industries, community leaders, and then a lot of chats, probably 33, 34 Zoom interviews, like 50 plus hours of footage. And then at the end, it was kind of that, doing the puzzle of how do I have enough representation of the nations, also genders, also industries, and that somehow it makes sense together, which was challenging because I feel some of them have stories that you could easily do a film of one person, like the whole, what they lived. So that's how we decided. And then Telmo, who is the one who narrates, it was at the end, a decision I took at the end, like something needs to put this together. And he's a great speaker. He's a very passionate person. So it was not hard to be like, Telmo, I have this idea and this and this. I need you to join this with this. And he would just do it beautifully because he grew up here. He came when he was 10 and he's very knowledgeable.
And let's talk a little bit about you, Diana. You are an immigrant. You arrived from Colombia around 10 or 11 years ago around. Do you see reflected in these stories as well? And in your opinion, has immigration from Latin America to Australia changed significantly during or in recent years? Sorry.
I do see myself reflected in some feelings. Of course, I feel my reality and the reality of many of the newer migrants from Latin America, at least, is that we chose to come here. We were not running away from anything, at least in these recent years. But I think, look, a documentary ends up being something very subjective, where if you have 100 hours of footage and you see like 1.5, it's what deeply resonates with the human that is putting that together. Many things resonated in terms of feeling, maybe different intensity, maybe not as literal, but totally, like even the otherness at the beginning, I had a very different experience than what I have now. So yes, about the second question?
No, in your opinion, the immigration from Latin America to Australia changed?
I think it has, same reason. So I feel newer migrants, and I've been surprised because I came to study university after high school, but I know most of the newer Latin Americans, they come highly skilled, and that's very different, and they come with incredible experiences, either back in their countries or even outside, everywhere in the world they've worked a bit, and they come as an opportunity to grow economically, not necessarily looking for a place to hold them. Venezuela is now a little bit seeking that, but in general, I feel it has changed in the terms of how people come. Many of them have, many degrees, PhDs, masters, and it's normal in Latin America.
And Diana, you have been living here in Ballarat for some time now, after living previously in Melbourne as well. And I would like to ask you, what is life like for a Latin American immigrant here in this beautiful city, in Ballarat?
Good. Good. I think, again, it's a very personal experience. Like, I wouldn't feel even comfortable saying Latin American, like, it's so many different Latin American migrants. My experience has been very positive. We came kind of running away from COVID while I was editing the doco, like all chaos, less lockdown here. But then going back to the Latin American, positive. I think Ballarat has been very welcoming. It's a city that has been changing a lot in the past few years. Of course, being a regional city is less diverse than Melbourne, and you see it, and you see groups of people that are simply not keen or aware, just lack of knowledge of the differences, and generally those people are those who haven't even been away much. So it's fun, it's a bit ironic, but I don't feel it's the majority, to be honest. I feel especially lately it's changing, and there's just more representation, perhaps not in the leadership positions, but it's a process. Everywhere in the country, I feel. But it has been good. I feel I now carry it in a different way. When I came to Melbourne, perhaps I wanted to blend in more. At uni, I was the only one with an accent in my class, and I was like, oh, I don't want to speak. I sound so different. Then through my work, and it's a whole personal experience of maybe that's not so bad. Being different has actually layers and powers beneath it. And when I came, I was editing this, so these people were like here all the time, being like, it's actually something that's good to carry with me, and that gives me certain perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very interesting. Based on your experience again, what challenges does Australia still face in becoming a truly multicultural and inclusive country?
That's a very complex question.
I know.
There's so many angles for it, so I think it's a much more welcoming country than when it was back then, perhaps. But I feel, and maybe I'm going to refer to one of the interviews I did in another project. This was a lady from Serbia, actually. She lived in many countries. She spoke 3 languages, and she did an analogy, like she felt Australia was a bit like a silo. Like she knocks in different doors, but no one wants to open the door to let her in the party, having all the skills and all the language, and she doesn't have these barriers of not speaking English or anything. And she was saying she feels Australia still works as a separate entity. And you do feel it sometimes in some places. So I think it's just embracing and stop seeing the division. And it also goes with us as immigrants, stop seeing the division as they settle at the end. So we can kind of see each other as humans. But I think representation, there's a beautiful sentence that says, you cannot be what you cannot see. And still, again, leadership positions, not only politicians, but media, it still doesn't represent what the people look like in the country, especially in big cities where you go to Melbourne now and it's, a completely different thing, not only in the cities, like in suburbs as well. So I feel that, just representation and, I don't know, policies, but that's a complex topic. I think understanding those who come, not only as they're making a favor of those who come, but people that come are helping the country so much to grow and to be what it is today.
And Diana, after presenting Nuestras Voces, our voices, in different locations across Australia, how has it been received by both the general public and also the Spanish and Latin American community? Have people felt represented by the stories that you shown in this documentary?
Yes, and I was very surprised, to be honest, because I think the fact that we did it in COVID, it was very intimate, the conversation, me, Latin stories, like such a little team we had no idea what was going to happen with this film, and it has been incredible. Like we showed it around the country on cinemas, and for me, even receiving Instagram messages of people that are not Spanish speakers, you know, being like, either they cried or either it was the stories of their parents, their grandparents, or even someone that came 3 years ago. I remember this lady in Brisbane, and she was like in a depression state, and she was like, I didn't feel, I was like, I shouldn't feel ungrateful because I'm here, but kind of seeing this made her feel seen and acknowledged and be like, it's okay to feel all the ways you're feeling. Many people are feeling that around you and have felt it before. And Spanish speakers, it has been beautiful to kind of get to know family trees and things when like grandkids or daughters, sons message me and, oh, my granddad, this and that. And yeah, it's beautiful. It just keeps reaffirming that we're all one, and this story may be in Spanish, but it's the same story of so many communities in Australia.
Diana, finally, what are the next projects? Are you currently working on a new documentary, or is it a secret? Or can you tell us something?
Not a secret. A few different projects. I am very interested in the female experience. And then in Ballarat, there's a group of African women, some of you are here, which I've been wanting to tell the stories for a while. That's a short film I want to make because I'm fascinated by the integration, because it's been decades that they've been here. Perhaps also because in Colombia we have African influence, now I think about it. And there's also a project back in Melbourne with professional migrant women called My Accent is My Superpower, which we're in the research phase, women from everywhere in the world, and kind of analyzing that newer migration. So it's not those reasons, it's more, you know, skilled people that come and how is that journey to truly feeling or being part of the professional growth, the economy of Australia, and the diverse experiences that they have.
Well, thank you very much, Diana, for your opinion, your thoughts, and also for this beautiful documentary. And thank you, all of you, for being here. It's very important for us to spread our culture and promote our culture and our work of this beautiful documentary. So thank you, all of you. Muchas gracias y buenas noches.